This is Shel C from Paper Rock TO Studios, and today is the day to reveal February's Pick a Stick Challenge, our videos. We pick the sticks at the beginning of the month and then share them in the Facebook group, and then we do our videos on the last Friday of the month. So be sure to check out my other three friends' videos, which will be linked in the box below where it says see more. The first thing that I decided to do was to gesso my page. This is a mixed media paper spiral bound journal, and I'm really trying to use it even though I don't like the paper very much. It buckles and I'm really having problems with it. When I was in search of something to use on this project, which was my little foiling kit, I couldn't find that, but I found this tissue paper that I had purchased a while back that I wanted to use. I remember doing this when I was a child in school. This is bleeding tissue paper, not to mean that it's actually bleeding, but the color bleeds out of it, and it can make some really cool effects. So I wanted some background color on my page, and none of the steps seemed to have anything about color. So I decided to do this first before I started doing the rest of this 10 steps. So I just picked some different bluish and purplish colors of the bleeding tissue, and then I tore it up and put it on my page, and then I got it very wet. I probably should have got it a little bit less wet, but I wanted the color to bleed. I don't think I needed to get it that soggy. So then I picked the pieces off. Should have done that with a pair of tweezers or something because my fingernails are still stained blue. It's very lovely. I was wondering if you could color your hair with it by just wrapping it around a strand of hair and getting it wet. I mean, that's how much stain it is. I think it would work. So if anybody wants blue hair, there you go. I was thinking it would be more of like little squares of color, but because I got it so wet and soggy, I think it just kind of mushed together. But it still looks really cool. Also, you can see that I didn't do a very good job of gessoing my page because the places where the color is darker is where it's soaked through to the actual paper. So the first step of the challenge was to add a die cut. I think that this page should be called Friends Should Let Other Friends Art Journal because pretty much everything that I put on this page was given to me. Almost everything. I will point out the things as we go that I added that were actually mine that I purchased, but everything else was gifts in Happy Mail and swaps and things like that. That little die cut with the music paper right there, somebody gave me that. I don't know who. I decided if one die cut was good enough, then I should put some more on there because it wasn't good enough. Normally, I would recommend that you go easy on the amount of things that you put on a page when you're doing this challenge because there are 10 steps and they'll just get to be more and more and more. And my January page, that's kind of what happened. It just got too busy. But all these other little die cuts, I think most of them came from a package that my friend Lizzie Beth gave me. And then that one, it was probably in somebody's Happy Mail. I'm not sure, but believe me, none of these belonged to me originally. I didn't purchase them. They all came as gifts. So, friends should let friends art journal, right? So I let that dry because I'd used matte gel to put those on, and it was pretty sticky and gushy, so I let that dry. And when I came back, the next step was to journal. I didn't really want anyone to see my journaling, and so I used a white Stabilo pencil to journal. You can kind of see it a little bit, but it doesn't affect the overall design. But it's still there, and I know it's there. The next one was to add foil. This foil stuff was given to me by my friend Katie, and it is really cool. She gave me several different colored sheets of it, and it's very malleable. It's very bendy and punchable and die cuttable. Pretty cool stuff. I wanted to add a little bit of texture to it, so I put it in one of these embossing folders, but I didn't run it through my machine. It's so bendable that all I had to do was just press down to add the texture. And I'm going to attach those with some more matte gel. This thing is covered in matte gel. I don't know if you noticed what I was doing at the beginning, but I did do the entire page. I covered the entire page after I put the tissue paper with matte gel when I was putting on the die cuts, because it runs with water, I just discovered. So bleeding gel runs with water no matter how dry it is, which makes sense because it's bleeding. Did I say bleeding gel? I meant bleeding tissue. I don't know. Anyway, so I put on my little pieces of foil, and the next step is to cut or rip the page. And so I just ripped that corner right off. I figured no problem. I'll just glue it to the next page. I'm having so much trouble with this spiral bound thing that I couldn't get them to line up, and I'm pulling and tugging, and finally I just say the heck with it. Just going to glue them. So I use some more of that matte gel medium and put it on the back of the page, and then squish it down to the next page in the book. And then I'm left with a piece of white at the bottom, and my little pieces of foil are still moving because that gel doesn't dry very quickly. And I'm impatient. I don't wait. I don't wait around for things to dry very often. So I'm just pressing it down, getting it to attach to that next page. And then I decide that I'm going to add more interest by tearing up what I tore off and adding it back in, leaving white in between. But it's not lined up, so I just trim that extra edge off with my Fiskars trimmer doohickey bobber. And then I just start putting some of the little pieces back on. I think that turned out really cool. I think I'm going to rip more of my pages because I like how it turned out. Of course, I can hardly move it over the spiral, and I can hardly close the book, and I think I've only done like maybe 6 or 7 pages in this thing, and already it won't close. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I might just cut that whole book apart and bind it with D-rings instead or something, because it's just getting on my last nerve. It really is. As if I have any nerves left after having a kid. No, I don't. Okay, the next thing, add metal. I'm like, wait a minute, didn't I just add metal when I added the foil? Come on. But I go and find these little butterfly clips because butterflies and flowers go together. I decide that I want them to have bodies so they look less like paper clips. So I use some navy blue cardstock and cut out little oval-y shapes to put underneath the metal piece to make it look like more like a butterfly. And then I'm going to use 3D matte gel from Finnabar to attach these, which is going to require more drying time than ever because this is really thick, but it will dry clear and you'll be able to see the pieces all the way through to the blue part, and it will hold the metal onto there. So that's why I'm doing it. The next thing is to use a gel print or a deli paper scribble. I decided to use a gel print, and this one is from someone else, probably in a tag swap. It's really cool. It's kind of blues and turquoises and a little bit of silvery color, and it's a scrap left over from a different project that I did. So I decided to add strips of that and put them over the white and the blue torn strips, which makes it look even cooler. I like it. Add other little torn pieces of it. There's not much of it left, so I didn't have enough to do another whole strip. And then I'll just trim that off and move on to the next step. The butterflies, the wire butterflies, I did actually purchase those. So that's one thing I did purchase. And this next step is to add a napkin, to use a napkin. And this napkin was given to me by Katie, and it has a phrase on it, hope inspire dream, I think it says. And I don't want to put it directly onto the page because of the dark background, and also I want to cut out the letters, and it's so hard to cut out a napkin. Believe me, I've tried. So I decide to attach it using perfect paper adhesive onto a piece of off-white cardstock, and then I just cut out the letters. And I'm not going to force you to watch me fussy cutting these letters. Besides, most of it's off the screen because whenever I cut something, I pull it close to my body so I can see with my bad eyes. And so I go off screen, and I'm sorry that I do that. I am trying to stop, but I'm addicted to it. I don't know. It's hard to stop. Anyway, then I'm just going to attach these again with matte gel medium. These are now thick because they're on cardstock. So I have to use the gel, and they keep wiggling around and they want to move, and this process probably took me the longest of anything on the page because of all the cutting and the wiggling and fussing, and they don't want to stay there and they want to move around. I'm trying to keep them straight. You know how it goes. So I speeded it up to 8 times fast, as if I could do it in real life that fast. It would be really awesome. But I like the way it looks. They're like some of them look like frames and some of them look like little typewriter keys. It's a really cool napkin, and I have a few more pieces of it, so I'll be using that again. Next step, add dots or stars and or a shape. Decided to use stars, and these are my actual star stickers. I own these. I had them for a different project, and these are the leftovers. They're very shiny. They have that 3D holographic stuff on them. Very, very shiny. So I add those. And then the next thing is to add wings. My favorite things with wings are butterflies and birds. And butterflies go with flowers, so I decided to use this butterfly die cut that I got from Heather in my mixed media box from the Craft Shack shop. And I decided to make it a little bit darker around the edges and make it blend more with the colors on the page by sponging the edges with some, I think it's blue jeans maybe, distress ink. And then I decide it also needs a little blue body like the other two butterflies on there. So I cut that out of cardstock and glue it on. And I'm just using Aleene's tacky glue. And then I decide to glue it just in the center at first, thinking the wings will lift up, kind of more dimensional. But then I decide to just tack them down a little bit more because I think that they're going to get wrecked when the book is opening and shutting. They're still they're loose, but they're not, they're not completely glued down, but they're also not going to come off there. And then, of course, butterflies need little antennas, so I drew in her little antenna. The last step is to draw in wet paint. I'm like, where am I going to do that? So I decided to do it on the butterfly wings. And I used some PBO, I think that's green blue maybe, paint, and I put it on. It's a heavy body paint. I put it on there pretty thickly, and then I just use a skewer that happens to be on my desk and draw some texture into the paint. And once that's dry, then it'll have feels to it. You can touch it and then it's be lifted up. So that's all the rest of my steps, but there's nothing in the rules of our challenge that says that you can't do more or less to whatever. You don't have to just do the steps. You do have to do the steps in the order that they are presented, but you can add other things like background colors, sponging, whatever you want to do. So I want to make the frame of the page a little bit darker. So I get back out the distress ink and sponge around it. Not exactly framing it, but just making it seem more closed in. And there's a lot of drawing. Trying to get everything dry, but I give up and move on. So this is my Stabilo all black pencil, and I'm just going around all the elements on the page and, well, not all the elements, the die cuts, and adding a shadow around the edges to blend them into the page more. And then, of course, I'm blending it with my water barrel brush. I know you've all seen this before a million times. I think pretty much everybody that makes a video does this or some form of it. But it really does help to blend in stuff and make it not look like it's just glued on, but more integral to the page. So that's why I do it. Besides, it's relaxing. I like to do it. It does take a little bit of time. And once I get to the letters, I just mostly apply the pencil to the bottom side as if it's a shadow of them being more dimensional off the page, like they're casting a shadow. And then I just kind of blend it around, but darker on the bottom, if that makes sense. Darker on the bottom right, actually, if that makes sense. It probably makes sense to somebody. Some things that happened to the page, just little things that happened to the page after I shut off the camera and it was dry the next day. I let it dry before I took pictures. I did add a tiny bit of Inca gold bronze color to the centers of those littler butterflies and kind of like dragged my finger over the textured part where I wrote in the paint of the butterfly to add a little bit of kind of a bronzy gold color. Just a tiny bit. And I think that the white Posca pen probably came out and added a few highlights because that always seems to happen. If Posca ever goes out of business and stops making those white pens, I'll be in big trouble. I'll probably have to go on a 12-step program to get rid of my addiction to them. So the last thing that I do on video before I set this aside to dry overnight is to add splatters with some white acrylic paint and my fan brush. Gotta do it. And then I just took my little printout and glued it on the back of the page next to it just so I remember what this was from. So here's your close-ups. So you can see a little bit of that Inca gold on my paperclip butterfly and on the big butterfly. And you can really see the texture in the flowers here. That's better. But I do want to say to be sure to watch the other 3 videos linked in the description box below. And also